For a while, I've been doing work on Black males in education. And a while back, I did some work in STEM. And so I was asked recently to write a chapter, and I had not been away from it for a while. So I said, I need to talk to some people who maybe have a new take on it, more updated on what's going on. So that's why I'm doing a few interviews. So I know, I mean, do you consider your field STEM?
I do. I do. There's a definite. I consider it more what they call STEAM, which is science, technology, arts. It's the arts is the other part that's in there. The A. Engineering, arts, and math, because it kind of overlaps in a lot of it. The art part is just the more creative aspects of how you apply technology to it. And that's particularly one of the areas that I find most attractive to a lot of young brothers and sisters. Many who have a lot of phobias about math learning and science, but very few of them would be hesitant to look at themselves as creatives. So one of the ways that I try to draw them in is by introducing like a lot of the artistic elements to that, and then showing them how they can take their artistic creativity to the next level by adding in, elements of math, science, technology, and so forth. So I wrote an article on this. Like, this is like one of the first articles I wrote. I don't even remember when it was, like maybe 2011 or something like that, on how to motivate African American and Hispanic males utilizing new media, digital media technology. And it was something and the reason I kind of got into this whole field, to be quite honest with you, is because I see a lot of myself in a lot of the students that I came across, who to a certain extent sometimes have not had the best or most positive experiences with educators throughout their tenure coming up, and who are battling everything from internal and external perceptions on who they should be, particularly as like young black men. There's a lot of it that kind of overlaps, and breaking down those negative stereotypes, even the ones that they fostered within themselves, and giving them an opportunity to a large extent to see that they can be greater than what they or others may have told them that they can be. That's the only reason I still do this. Lord knows it ain't for the money. It really isn't. And I suspect that the post that you saw was with one of the students, a gentleman by the name of Patrick. And I took him and a group of my capstone students to the ITP spring show. ITP is the Interactive Telecommunications Program in NYU, and it's the program that I came through. And the program is essentially a master's level program that merges science, technology, arts all together. And I took a group of my students there so that they could see the project, so that they can see kind of where I came from and what motivated me to kind of get into this field. And there was about 3 of them that actually wound up applying to the school. Patrick was the only one who could make it work, and that's because, it's NYU, so it was like $80K a year. I believe Amy got in, but she just couldn't swing the money. The $80K was just too much for her, and I understood that. But I wanted them to see the types of projects that were being done by students who were literally going to go out and shape the next generation of new media, digital media technology. And Patrick was one of those that got very inspired by it. And the reason why why I felt the need to post that is because I'm at the point now where I'm ready to leave academia. I'm actively looking around. I think the only reason I'm still here is because the pandemic kind of the pandemic just kind of made it a smart thing to do, just to kind of hang out for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been struggling with, like, like, what have I really done with the last 20 years of teaching?
Mm.
And Patrick had, when he reached out to me, it was like, okay, maybe it all hasn't been for nothing. Maybe, I have had an impact on certain students, and that's not a bad legacy to have.
No.
It's not. And it was great because a bunch of other students, after they saw that, reached out to me. And you ain't gonna make me cry or nothing. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. But it
And
was,
that's okay too.
no, it's fine, it's fine. But there was a number of them that reached out, and it made me realize that maybe this, it didn't turn out exactly the way that I wanted, definitely, but maybe it wasn't for nothing. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe there was some good that kind of came out of this. So.
So on that vein, mentoring Black males, do you think that the ideal situation is for Black males to mentor Black males in STEAM or STEM?
Absolutely. It's great if we can get Black males to do it. But I think Black males in particular just need mentoring, just like every student. They need some type of mentor, whether it's white, Black, Asian. They need someone to care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more important than anything else. Someone who's invested in their success and who lifts them up when they need to be lifted up, and sometimes kicks them in the behind when they need to be kicked in the behind. But as long as it comes from a place of kind of like love. A lot of these kids don't need someone telling them that they're not smart, that they're not worthy. And I see that a lot, even with some of our own colleagues. There's a reason why kids are sometimes disinvested from academia. It's sometimes a painful experience for them. Imagine going someplace day in, day out where they've been told that they're not worthy. Of course they're going to be hesitant to do certain things. I look at my own journey, and I was way more privileged than a lot of the kids that I kind of came up with. Way more privileged.
You grew up in New York City, right? You were born in New York City. You grew up here.
Born and raised in New York. I went to private school. I posted something like the private school that I went to in high school. The annual tuition for the high school now is like $52,000 a year. And it's hilarious because three of the dudes who I'm still closest to at 55 are guys who I went to high school with. It was me and one other brother, a friend of mine named Adesla Sakalumi. We were the only two Black males who graduated from our graduating class. There was a couple of us who came in, but he and I were the only two who graduated, and we struggled throughout high school. The reason that I stayed with it, I was an athlete. This was a rich white private school. I mean, Columbia Prep. This is the school that Trump sent his son to. Edward Stern, whose father is Leonard Stern from the Stern School of Business. He was in my graduating class. Rukeyser, Trish Rukeyser, who's family of the Rukeysers. When I'm talking like old money, I'm talking old money. These are the kids that we were next to. Des was a little poor kid from the Bronx. I was a poor kid from Harlem. We we learned very early on that if we wanted respect and if we wanted to be valued, it had to come from internal, not from external sources. People often wonder why I'm outspoken sometimes, as outspoken as I am, is because there's nobody who I've seen who has impressed me, because I've seen I've seen the richest of people with their fallibilities and issues and dysfunctions. I learned very early on I'm no better and definitely no worse than anyone else. And there's certain things that I'm just not going to tolerate. And I try to instill that into the students who I have coming up. Don't let anybody tell you, don't let anyone define you other than yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, then just call it a wrap then, because how you expect other people to lift you up if you don't feel good about yourself? It all comes from internal. And I've seen that significantly in the area of tech fields, where you may walk into a room and literally be the only black face in there. And there are other people of color. I mean, beyond Asians and Indians, or I guess those are all Asians, you don't usually see many people of color in the room. I saw that when I worked at the .coms. I saw that in the program at ITP. It was very few black people in the program. There's still very few black people in the program. I go there and do, for the last few years, I've been doing thesis advising for students there. I've mentored some of the black students coming in through their program. And to ITP's credit, they've been trying to increase their enrollment, actively trying to increase. They realize that, diversity and greater inclusion is something that they should definitely be working towards. And they have done that. But, I honestly want all the students that I come to understand that even if you don't like the environment, the skills that you can develop will allow you to craft something or create something of your own. You don't have to work in certain organizational structures if you don't fit in, quite honestly. You don't have to compromise. If you learn how to program, if you learn how to design, develop, build something from scratch, monetize your own content, you don't have to worry about getting hired at this place over here, or start your own thing. If they don't want to give you a seat at the table, excuse my language, shit, build your own table. Move on. And I think that our students, and by our students I mean black male students, need more of that than most, just from a societal standpoint, how they've been programmed to view themselves. And I've struggled with this now as a father to a young black son who has, his mother is Norwegian, genetically speaking, as white as you can get. You have your father who's straight up New Yorker, him coming to grips with his own identity and finding out his place in the world. And one of the things that I've always, to a certain extent, regretted in some ways was that I raised him in an environment where very early on, it was really multicultural, where, and not that that's a bad thing. I don't want you to think that I think that that's a bad thing, but once he hit high school, it was like a switch changed. When people start jockeying for their future positions in the world, all of a sudden he went from being just one of the guys, just like everybody else, to at least in America, different. he's not the same as us. And it was almost like, if you've ever seen that movie, The Matrix, where it was like, he took that red pill and all of a sudden he saw the world for what it was, with all of the racism, we moved from, and it's, I don't want to say I regret this, but we bought a place in the Bronx. For 18 years, my wife and I had lived right in the heart of Manhattan. We lived in Stuyvesant Town, middle of Manhattan. Gorgeous rent-stabilized apartment that I got through the old job that I had when I was working at MetLife, because MetLife owned it. So the kids grew up in the heart of Manhattan. So when we finally said, if we don't buy a place soon, we're going to have trouble getting in somewhere, and we wanted to own something. So we said, finally, we bought a big co-op that's right on the Bronx, Westchester border. Larger than what we could have gotten in Harlem, safer than any of the places that we looked at in Brooklyn. But all of a sudden, my son's address changed, and how some of his friends reacted was like, oh, we can't come up there to see you now. And that bothered him. And I had to basically try to help him understand that your address, where you live, has nothing to do with you. Much in the same way as I talk to my students, your color, your financial status, that has nothing to do with your worth as an individual or as a human being. And never let anyone, I don't care whether it's educators, presidents, pastors, whoever, your own mother and father, if never let anyone make you think less of yourself. And if someone does, then they're not worthy of your attention. They're not worthy of you giving them the attention that they may think that they deserve. You have to define yourself. And that's one of the things that I've struggled with as an instructor, as a teacher, as a professor. It
sounds like a lot of the mentoring that you do in teaching is emotional and deals with issues other than the skills, although you teach the technological skills and the artistic skills, obviously, but that a lot of the mentoring is emotional and supportive in other ways. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, you don't see a whole lot of black people in STEM because black people aren't capable of learning this. That's not the reason. The reason you don't see it is that either they don't feel included, they don't feel that it's a safe space, a safe environment. Sometimes it might be that they themselves don't think that they're capable of learning this. I had huge math phobia coming out of high school. I had one bad class, and there was one teacher in particular who was just kind of like, you can't learn this. Really. So, you hear that enough times, when you're younger, you'll take in that trauma. The reason that there was a 10-year gap between when I finished college and when I went back to get my advanced degree. The reason was that I was done with school. I didn't have a whole lot of professors who nurtured me. I didn't feel that it was a particularly safe space, environment, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. However, mm-hmm. I had a ton of athletic coaches who loved me and who helped me through school. My high school basketball coach was a main reason that, I went to college. And he looked out for me. He got me a full ride at Colorado College and Colorado Springs. An area of the country I would probably have never gone to visit. He was like, I'm a lookout, got me a full ride there. So I went there, I played 2 years, saw that I wasn't going to go pro. I had another friend who I played basketball with at Columbia Prep who said, I'm at Oberlin. Come to Oberlin, it's a different type of vibe. There's black people here. Oberlin was like one of the most multicultural, anything goes type of environments. Keep in mind, this was like the the mid '80s. It was not unusual to have males, gay males, walking down the street holding hand in hand during the mid '80s, like just out in the open. In Ohio, out in this little, that was unheard of. You didn't see that. And people felt comfortable and safe to live however they particularly wanted to live, as long as you wasn't messing with anybody else. Oberlin changed the way I looked at a lot of things. And I had people who looked out for me, but I can't think back on high school or college, any single professor or teacher that looked out. And my experience is not unique, sadly enough. So when I step into the classroom, if I see a student who's struggling, who's sometimes making excuses, my initial thing is not to beat them up even further. There's a reason why. If no one wants to do badly, there's no student.
They don't go to college they're there for a reason. Yeah.
Right. They're not there to look, so if they're disengaged, there's a reason why. And my sabbatical project was this thing I put together called the Empathy Project. And the reason that I did this for a year, I interviewed different people, is because I see that there's a toxic lack of empathy in our society. And it is horrifying to see that lack of empathy from people who should be the most empathetic. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about, everything from healthcare workers, police officers, college professors, if someone has some type of fear, trauma, and that's different. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who are lazy, who don't want to do certain things. And you call them out on that, but you don't embarrass people. You don't turn whatever issue that they may have into further trauma. This is, and I know you and I spoke about this a long time ago. Well, I believe that you're of a Christian faith, and it's a big part of who you are. Mm-hmm. I grew up, I wouldn't say in the church, but around it, and the reason why I don't consider myself Christian any longer is that a lot of the people who supposedly the most devout followers of Christ were the people who were least empathetic. And that's the thing that just trips me out. It's like Jesus would say, yo, fuck that kid. He wouldn't do that. It's like, you lift people.
Well, look at the evangelical church in America backing Trump, supporting racism. I mean, get your head around that.
It's for me, it's just mind-boggling. I felt good that I think I've made some difference in some students' lives, but I don't know if it's enough. And a large part of what I do, the teaching and technology part is the easiest. It's not that black kids can't learn this stuff. I've seen black kids pull apart Xboxes and mod them in ways that, so it's not like they're technophobic.
Right.
But you have to tie them into something that they see of value, how it benefits them. I use hip hop a lot. I'm from New York. You can't throw a microphone and not hit like a random rapper or MC on the street. But then you start talking to them about, okay, you want to do music. Well, how do you learn the programs, learn to create your own, how to mix your own music, how to shoot your own videos. Shoot your own videos in a way that nobody else shoots them, utilizing maybe 360 cameras or drones, or, then all of a sudden it becomes, oh, wait a minute, yo, that's, I didn't think about that. Oh yeah, now, so how are you going to market and promote yourself? Okay, well, why don't you create an app or market yourself through social media, or, any, tying aspects of commerce. Produce your own merchandise, your own T-shirts with your logos. Then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a minute, I can really do this with this type. So now they're not opposed to learning about the technology or learning the theory, because they see some value in it. I try to be the type of teacher at this point that I wish I had had at some point.
Mm-hmm.
A large part of what the mentoring that I do is more emotional, it's not the technology. I love the technology, but anybody can teach that. You have to kind of reach them at where they are, and just care. There's so many professors who I reach that I see they don't care, and that's why I'm starting to get to the point where I was like, maybe it's time for me to go, because the semester before my sabbatical happened, I found myself getting irritated with two students in particular, and I never get irritated with them. Like I get pissed off at people all the time, but I usually don't get pissed off at the students. There was two in particular who really was starting to get on my nerves. And then I was just like, I don't know if I don't want to be that teacher who comes in and checks out. And I got 10 more years. If I stay at LaGuardia, I got somewhere between 6 to 9 years. Well, actually now we're done with this year. So it's like, 5 to 9 years to go till I can retire. And I don't want to just be one of those. I've seen professors like this who just kind of come in and just check out.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to the people who are in class in front of you. And it's not fair to yourself. Life's too friggin' short. If you ain't loving what you're doing, jettison it and move on.
I just want to go back to a couple of things that you said. The fact of mentoring a black male mentoring a black male, but there's some faculty who have not had the same life experience. Let's say they are faculty from another country, particularly Africa in many cases, or Caribbean descent or whatever, and they become faculty, and they may not understand the life experience of some of our young men. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I've run into that a number of times.
Absolutely. It's different cultural. Let's speak. My father's side of the family is from St. Croix. My mother's side of the family is from down south, so there's cultural differences right there. Interacting with a lot of my African brothers and sisters, particularly ones who've come over here, a lot of them don't look at American blacks, and I'm gonna be real with this, in a very positive light.
Right.
They're lazy. They're this, they're not smart, tons of things. And I kind of understand their point of view, because many of them are coming from extreme places of extreme poverty where they literally had nothing. And I got that. Their ghettos are ghettos. I mean, just, even in the poorest areas around here, you generally will have running water. Right. You generally have toilets inside. So their opinion is like, well, we had nothing. And the argument that I have with a lot of them is like, yeah, but you had a community. You've had years of, you've had trauma in your own way, but you didn't have the same type of sometimes systematic trauma that we've had here, where we've been told for long periods of time that we ain't shit. Excuse my language, and I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I get it.
But we've been told that we're not anything. And sometimes, especially from an emasculation standpoint, where you have this kind of like machismo, there's a disconnect. There's a serious disconnect between African Americans and Africans. And a perfect movie that kind of touched on that I don't think a lot of people caught. If you saw Black Panther, that was kind of like one of the central themes of it, and nobody really talks about that. Where it's kind of like they got to help themselves. And it's, once again, it goes back to that lack of empathy. It's like you don't know how it was to grow up here. And I'm not saying that that you didn't have it tough. I'm not saying that sometimes tough love, you have to lead with the love first before you get tough. And a lot of my Caribbean and a lot of my Caribbean family have that same type of notion. They don't look at me like that because I don't play that. But it's that, well, and I understand where they're coming from. There has to be a part of you that says that I'm not going to lose.
It takes responsibility, yeah.
Right.
Despite everything.
I don't care what happens. I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to roll over. But also realize that not everybody has had the examples in their lives that shows them that they can do it. My father was murdered when I was 14, coming out of his store. And even before that, my father was a number runner. My father was a hustler. My father did a lot. My father ran the streets. My father was a hustler. So he was around. He was always in my life. But I didn't see him like on a daily basis. But I had a lot of uncles. And all of them were, even some of them were street. Two were cops. And I learned to a large extent about manhood by watching them. I saw my uncle, who was in the police department for 20 some odd years, the nonsense that he went through, being a black police officer in New York during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The struggles that he dealt with institutionalized racism within his own department, seeing how his colleagues looked at and treated people within his own community. And I saw the pain that caused him, but that he never gave up. They did horrific stuff to him, denied him promotions, denied him, when he spoke out about things that were wrong, they had him doing like foot posts on like the Brooklyn Bridge in the middle of winter, just that type of like, and there was a part of me that always kind of like, why don't you just quit? Just screw them, quit. He was like, nah, they ain't gonna make me quit. And I don't think a lot of our brothers and sisters have seen that type, have people maybe within their life who've shown them that type of fortitude. Now, a lot of our African brothers and sisters who really have nothing, no food, no running water and stuff like that, you kind of have to be like that, because if you don't eat, they're struggling for like some of the primary things, but they have very little empathy for us. They have very little empathy for us. And this is one of the reasons why you don't see me personally, running around championing a lot of like African causes. I don't. They don't care about us. So I'm like, I've been told. I got friends who have gone to Africa who are like, they want to return there. One in particular who's been trying to get me to go to Sierra Leone with him. And he talks about it like it's a paradise and this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, yeah, I've heard how they speak about us. Sometimes they speak about us in very, very negative terms without understanding how it is to be here. When we champion everybody, we basically fight for everybody's rights. And when time comes for us to basically be helped, nobody wants to put in any time or effort. Biden, for example, I'm not a big Biden fan, but he signed that Asian bill quick as all outdoors. And I'm not saying that the Asian community absolutely needs to be protected, but we were the people who helped vote him in. And why not come out against qualified immunity for police? Just some structural changes that would help the very community that put you over the hump in South Carolina. I'm at the point where I am so done, just emotionally spent. I don't know if things will get better here, and I'm getting to the point where I don't care if they're better here as long as I can leave.
So that takes me to an actually kind of a final question. The toll. All right. The toll, because you talked about the mentoring and most of the teaching, the stuff that you've done. The hardest part is giving the emotional support. And so what kind of a toll does that take on you? Either within the institution, professionally, or just emotionally yourself. Has it taken a toll on you?
That part hasn't really taken a significant toll on me. I actually enjoy that part. That's the part, when I'm talking about when students call you up or, look for recommendations or advice about how to handle things. That's the part that hands down is the easiest stuff to do, because that's the stuff that I think is actually important. All the other crap that they ask us to do, like I had an issue with like some of the publishing stuff. And I'm not saying that I know you're writing articles. I'm not getting on that, but
no worries.
But what I'm saying is that the mentoring that we do should be valued at least on the same level as writing articles within our specific field. I think our first and primary duty is as instructors to help raise these literally children to be the best that they can be. It's not about me writing an article to promote myself as an academic or, and that's great too. But you realize that that's not what once you realize that from a structural institutional standpoint, they don't care about the students, or I shouldn't say that the students aren't the main priority. All students, not just black, but all students are not the priority. You see, when you go through the whole tenure, promotion, reappointment thing, what's basically categorized as the hierarchy: publishing, service, and then teaching. Those in that order. And then because black children in general are usually categorized lower, if the teaching is at the lowest level, teaching black students is at the very lowest level. And that's disheartening.
And would you say the majority of your students in your program are black males or no?
No,
No.
no. When we did the PPR, when I did the PPR about several years ago, the large majority, it was Hispanic males. I forget what I'd have to look at the demographic, but it wasn't black males. Black males were not the largest demographic. I had proposed to create a larger entity that would truly merge arts, technology, and sciences together, where you would have professors from the MEC department who teach programming, hardcore programming skills, C++, C++, Java, those languages, with creatives like Mark Brooks from music technology, to people in Joyce Rubin's program who teach film and video, a truly digital media, basically like a little ITP, like NYU's program. Because then I would generally see that you would have people, and it's the same issue where you don't have a lot of women, or have as many women in the STEM fields, is because they feel that it's not that women can't learn any of this technology. They haven't felt comfortable in these environments from a cultural standpoint. If you've done any type of employee studies with how these companies hire, the thing that they always look at during the interview process is, are you the right fit for their culture? Which to me is not so subtle keywords of do we want you here? I've gotten into places, I think sometimes, just because I have such an English name, James Richardson. If my name was, Tyrone or this, something like that, I think I wouldn't have got as many interview requests as I did. And when I'm less angry, I can actually put on that voice, you have to. The mentoring is doesn't take a toll on me. What does take a toll on me is seeing sometimes how underprepared some of the students are, and wondering how can I get them from where they currently are to where they're going to currently need to be to compete.
And do you think they're underprepared because of the schools that they went to?
Yeah, absolutely. The schools that they went to, the types of instructors that they've had over the years, some societal issues, trauma. Nobody wants to come to school and be bad, to sit in a classroom, and not know what's going on. That's not a good feeling. But they've gone down a path so far that they don't see how to course correct. And part of what my job is to do, I feel, is to show them, yeah, you've taken the off ramp, but here's the path or the route to get back on the highway. How you can get, you may start off in a slow lane to merge onto the highway, but if you keep at it, you can get up to speed and run with the best of them. And a lot of them don't believe that. So, and I've had some of my African colleagues who are like, you're too easy on them. You're too, and I'm like, yeah, but when you beat them up or then they leave. They totally disengage. So how have you solved the issue? Tough love works after you show them the love.
And they feel safe and secure.
Right. So if I said, if they come to Richardson, a lot of them call me Richardson by my last name. They come to Richardson and I didn't do this. And I can get on them and say, yo, you need to do this, and this. They know it's not coming from a place like you're nothing, this, that, and the other. they look at it as like, yeah, I got to take responsibility for this. I messed up. He's believing in me. I need to do better.
Better.